Right, hello. I'm just trying to get the Zoom working again because it's decided to go. There we go. Yeah, I zoomed it in and then it actually was a bit too zoomed in. So I'm doing a stream, right? I want to see if in the live stream options now, because it's told me, you know, they actually sent me a notification thing to say, oh, you can do this for your live stream now if the dual mode works, because I'm doing it in a proper 16:9 widescreen ratio. So it should be able to do the vertical of me right in the middle. So let's see if it actually lets me do it. If not, they've told me again that I've got a feature that I can't use. So view in live control room. Oh, and look, is dual stream seems to not be an option again. Yeah, still can't do dual stream, so I have no idea what's wrong with this. But yeah, they keep telling me I'm able to do dual stream and it doesn't work. Again, I don't know why they even gave me a notification in the other day to say, oh, you can do dual stream if it just doesn't work. Again, it's probably something that YouTube hasn't got sorted out properly at their end yet, but it's just annoying that they keep telling me like, oh, you can do a dual stream, and it doesn't let me. All right, Rob. Yeah, all right, thank you. Waiting in most of today for some parcels, but they've arrived. So the one that will be more interesting is this one. Said about this the other day, wanted to get one to do a review on it, because these are like £50. It says Geiger counter. It's not technically a Geiger counter. It's a what do you call it? I've reviewed one a bit like this before, but I think this one's actually different and better. But oh, what's the word for it? Semiconductor detector. So it uses a semiconductor to detect radiation rather than the Geiger millitube. So hopefully this is all right. So I'm going to open it up in a minute and have a look at it. And also, because this was the cheapest one I could find that was new that looked to that style, the kind of National Geographic rip-off of the US Army compass. Because I could find actual US ones for a surplus that cost loads of money in the US with postage and stuff like that. So I wasn't going to buy, you know, 40-year-old surplus that I had to pay like over $100 for plus shipping, you know, so it would come to $200 to get one of those, to compare it to one of these. And some of the other sellers I didn't reckon looked genuine. You know, like, you know, it'd be another brand a bit like one of these that they were then just selling for way more money. So I thought I'll just get one of these cheapo ones and then I can at least see how that compares to a lot of the things. But at least this comes with like an actual pouch and everything, so it doesn't seem that bad for a cheapo little compass. But yeah, we'll have a look at this in a minute. But let's just see if the orientation is actually correct on this compass. But at least by getting a new one, I'd know there'd be no bubbles and whatever in this. Whereas, you know, when you get, the problem is some of the surplus ones is you still can get ones with, you know, really bad bubbling. That's actually metal. I thought that was going to be plastic. Okay, that's surprisingly nice. Yeah, I think this is a pretty much one-to-one rip-off of the US Army compass. So there we go. I wonder if it's got loom on it. We'll find out. So yeah, does this have loom? Oh, it's actually got loom on as well. Obviously, it's not going to be tritium on a civilian-style one, but there is actually loom on that, so that's pretty cool. I don't know where you can actually see that on there, but that definitely has loom. Okay. And yeah, loom on that bit as well. Now, is that actually tritium in there? Amaze me if it was. I doubt it is, because there's not a radiation warning. I think that's probably just some quite good glow-in-the-dark strontium paint. Right, Rajiv? But yeah, so anyway, got this just for this reason that, you know, I can actually compare it. Right, let's check the orientation's correct. So if I'm facing that way, that should be pretty much west. Yeah, that's pointing west. Yeah. Which way are you meant to read this compass around? Normally put your thumb through there, don't you? So you're probably meant to be reading it away from you like that. Yeah, that's showing east in the direction east would be. Although, again, I don't know if there's something with the room screwing it up, because some of the compasses don't work in this room very well. Yeah, it's showing west again. But then again, am I reading it the right way round? But anyway, we'll have a proper look at that at some point. Unless you're meant to just read it flat on like that. So, west. Again, we'll do a proper video on that at some point where I do it somewhere where I know compasses work. Because like I said, that's not good, Rob. I mean, I doubt the bracelet would be making him ill because, you know, you have to need to have a really high dose of radiation to get properly ill. But yeah, those things are dodgy as fuck, you know, and it should be completely illegal to sell them. Probably not going to be getting a lot of gas masks out today because this arrived today, which I was waiting in for. So we're going to have a see if there's any charge in it and set it up. Yeah, the proper Kamega ones, Ben, as opposed to the rip-off ones. But like I was saying, that was one of the problems. So the nice thing of this is actually comes with like a little Pelican case thing for it, which was one of the other things that made me think, oh, I'll shell out a bit of money even if I don't want to spend it at the moment. Right, so it's actually got a proper like insert in there, so that's nice. An actual proper manual, that's pretty rare to see. So put the manual there. So this is our detector. It's got a lanyard as well by the look of it, so I'll put the lanyard on it in a minute. And it's got its own USB cable that looks fairly decent, but I won't plug that in at the moment, so I've got enough USB cables. Right, so let's... yeah, that was one of the things that made me like to look at this one, because again, this is one of the ones that on Amazon is a pretty damn good price if it works well. So I bought it to do a couple of like a short review and a full length review on, and then if it turns out to be good, then this is probably one of the best priced Geigers. Again, it's not a Geiger, but for all people's intents and purposes, it's a Geiger counter. But it isn't technically, you know, how it works. But just trying to get the lanyard through its little lanyard hole properly. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, the lanyard went on easy. Well, let's turn it on and see. Now, apparently this has two modes in it. It has a fast mode and a slow mode, because I did see a load of people were apparently using this in the slow mode and then complaining that it was in the slow mode. So assuming that the fast mode is actually fast, it's actually got some quite nice rubberized bits. Because again, there's a Chinese one I reviewed that looked very similar to this. I think it was in yellow, but I don't think the interface or whatever was as nice as this. So whether or not this is like a later model of that one, or it's just they've used the same plastic housing, but it's a totally different thing internally, I don't know. But this should be what's called a semiconductor detector. Because, yeah, range, it says it does 0.05. So that's lower than the background I normally get in this room anyway. To, is that 50,000 microsieverts an hour? So 50,000 microsieverts an hour would be 1,000 microsieverts in a millisievert. So that would be 50,000 would be 50 millisieverts, which is what, 5 Rontgen. So yeah, it might be a Geiger tube, but some people are saying it's a semiconductor. I won't know till I open it up. But yeah, anyway, let's see what our settings are, because there's a load of settings. Again, the reason I like the look of this is it's got very much a bit like the GQ GMC 800 ad. It's got very much like one of those quite good looking color displays that looks like it's quite easy to read for somebody who doesn't know, you know, as in like you've got a red, you know, it goes from green to red. So as long as you're not colorblind, it should give you a good visual scale of how dangerous something is. So let's just have a look at what settings we've got on here. So I can do total dose, total dose rate average. Yeah, so that's the two settings on that left and right button. So there's the measure one, there's schedule, records, delete. Actually, it's just deleting data off of it. Alarm. So the dose rate alarm goes off at 1 microsievert. Total dose if you go over 300 microsieverts. Standard. Ordinary people 0.52. Professional staff 10 microsieverts an hour. So I think that's just telling you, you know, if you were in certain jobs. Units. You can have microsieverts or micro Rontgen. You can have it in Chinese or English. And yeah, there's the slow and fast mode. So I'm going to change it to fast. Oh, that's not how apparently I go through that menu. Yeah, there we go. Right, I've set this to fast now. So, and sound. Let's see what sound options there are. Particle sounds. Right, we always want to turn particle sounds on if they're an option. So, all right, we now put particle sounds on. So, but again, if this was one, and I'm just going to set the clock to the right date as well while I've got this. Clock, year, Oh yeah, that's correct. 26/01/12. Is that the date? No, it's the 11th today, isn't it? It's because it's in Chinese time. So yeah, it's essentially in probably like Hong Kong time or whatever, or other Chinese time. So anyway, let's I'll put the thing to live chat as well because it's currently on top chat, which means some messages don't come through. So the hour at the moment is 18:13. So all right, Cookie. So yeah, we'll test this in a minute and see how fast the response time is. Yeah, it was only 2 minutes out. I'll set that to 18:14, and then it's less than a minute out. So yeah, that was just set to a different time zone. Otherwise, completely correct. Right. Okay. So go back to the measure mode. So it reckons here I'm at 0.31 microsieverts, which could be about right. It's normally about 0.2 where I'm sitting in this chair. But if I had it over there, then you've got the radium dial and it's going down a bit. So yeah, let's see how fast the response time actually is if I get something radioactive out. So let's put this behind it. So this is in fast mode. Yeah, it's not too slow. Again, this is probably slower than some of the counters, but this is a cheap counter. Again, I think some of the people that were really... Sorry, I'm turning the alarm off. Right, I'll tell you what, I'm going to turn the alarm sound off. Sounds. Alarm volume. There we go. Right, so yeah, because if I'm testing this, it's always going to be going off. Red just means it's higher radiation and any acceptable background levels. So that's gone up to about 66 microsieverts. That's pretty accurate for this thing. Again, it should be a bit higher if I probably have to dial in this area. 71, yeah. So this does seem responsive enough where people were complaining it wasn't responsive. They probably had it in the slow mode, not the high mode. Like slow mode, not the fast mode, sorry. Because, yeah, so that seems accurate enough so far. So I'll check it in a minute with a DP2 source. I'm just going to let it go down. So how quickly does it return to the background? So yeah, it's one of those ones that's not stupidly fast updating, but it's not stupidly slow either. And for the price of it, for the specs, it seems quite good. So, oh, that sounds good, Saint. Have you got a Zeiss lens for it? Right, and yeah, we're back to background, or it's going to count back up to background. Right, let's get the DP2 source, and I'm just going to put that flat on the desk like that while it counts up, so I don't have to hold the control source in my hand. See how well it can detect this through the little jar. Is it going to go up? What's quite funny is in this jar, I can actually smell ozone, where obviously, because that's been sealed like up airtight and there's been a radiation source in there, it smells of ozone, which is quite funny. That's actually quite cool. But I've never noticed that before. But yeah, it's not the smell of an individual thing in there doing that. Oh, it's also because this one's been slightly ajar, yeah. Jar, and it's got the DP2 source in it. So probably gonna not keep bothering to put that in there. Let's put it somewhere else. Anyway, let's that's picking up the DP2 source without being on it, but let's put it, see how it goes as I lower it onto the DP2 source. Yeah, again, I don't think this is a GM tube in this. Oops, the thing's closed. Let's see if I can get back. Right, just make sure it's on the sensitive area. There we go. Right. But yeah, so like I said, if this is a semiconductor detector, they work in a different way to Geiger counter. So yeah, this is, although it's already gone up to the 600 like microsievert thing, this should go, depending on how well it detects it through the case of beta radiation, it's gone over 1 millisievert, which is good. Like in theory, this could go up to about 15 millisievert, I think, on this. But again, I'm not expecting super accuracy out of this thing for things like this, because again, ionization chambers are the most accurate if you just want a real measure of the radiation. This probably has similar issues to Geiger-Müller counters, where depending on the tube and when the tube saturates and what it's calibrated on, you'll get either a higher or lower reading and whatever else. But yeah, this is reading 0.01, so 1 essentially 1.3 millisieverts, so it's definitely a stronger source than that. But it knows it's dangerously high, at least. If I hold that further away, will it stop doing the click again? But yeah, it has a Geiger-y kind of click, but it doesn't do the proper Geiger clicking. And I think the reason for that is, I think because it probably is a semiconductor detector, it doesn't actually doesn't, like, they don't actually do the particle clicks, because it's Geiger millitubes that actually have the electrical impulses in them that is then put into a speaker that does the tick 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 tick. So yeah, anyway, I'm impressed enough with that it's actually, you know, passed a few little tests, that I haven't overloaded and stopped it working with that individual detector. So what I'm going to do now is, even though let's void the warranty on it straight away, I want to show you what's inside it and check live on, get ads on live stream, because there's ads turned on the live stream. The only way you're not going to get ads on a live stream is if you've got what's it, YouTube Premium or whatever, because you know, that's how YouTube works. Right, maybe that screwdriver. Yeah, that's the right screw size for it. I don't want to lose the screws, so I'm going to be careful doing this. I'm hoping this is one where I can undo the screws a bit and lift the screws out in the back of the case. Yeah, that's exactly the right size screwdriver. If people use an ad blocker, then I wouldn't get anything, no. And again, that's why ad blockers are actually shit for YouTube, that as much as people whinge about ads on YouTube, you have to remember that the only way people get income through YouTube is, again, through advertising. So again, it's like, if you're watching people and then being like, oh, I support this channel, you know, and if you didn't ever give them donations, but you use an ad blocker, you're not supporting the channel, because they're not going to get anything. But again, like I said, if you don't want to see ads, as annoying as it's going to sound to people, YouTube Premium, yes, is the good option, because then you don't see an ad, but YouTube still gives a couple of like pence or cents if there would have been an ad to the channel. And again, the main reason I use YouTube Premium myself is because I like having stuff on non-stop in the background with YouTube while working or whatever. So again, you know, the lack of adverts on that means it's a good compromise for me. Right, yeah, I think I can get this off without, you know, like the entire back case. Yeah, exactly, Raj. If that's the thing, is ads are annoying, I can completely get it if you're at that end. But obviously, as a content creator, I'm completely aware that, you know, when I'm watching people's content, you know, the ads are what is getting them money out of it. Now, if it was an unmonetized channel, what was I going to say? If it's an unmonetized channel and, you know, they're not signed up for it and you still get ads, that content creator isn't getting anything out of it. So it's one of those things, because a while ago, people used to do this thing like, out of principle, I won't put ads on my channel kind of thing, you know, which was fine for a while. But the problem was then YouTube made it that even if you didn't put the ads on, they just put ads on and take 100% of the revenue. So, you know, there's not even a moral kind of argument for creators doing it anymore. The creators, you know, you're going to have to watch the adverts either way. So you might as well have it done in a way where, I think that's coming away now. Oh, it's because I've got the lanyard on there, isn't it? Whoops. Right, can I get the lanyard off easily without damaging it? Because, yeah, I didn't even think about that. Unless I can just open this up to see if it's a semiconductor. Easily there. That's, of course, the side of the counter. Actually, these rubber bits come off the side, don't they? Unless they're glued in. Again, it'd be much better doing this on a workbench and trying to do it with my hand and not lose any little screws. Yeah, that just comes away there. Right, cool. So, be prepared for blinding light. Yeah, that is a semiconductor detector. So I don't know how well you're going to see this in here, but if I hold that up like that, you can turn that, put that light right behind the camera there. You might be able to see there. Hang on, if I get this right. Okay, this fucking lamp, it's kind of a good lamp in theory, but you can never get it to go exactly right. See, that's not a Geiger Muller tube in there, if that wants to autofocus. Not a GM tube, it is a semiconductor detector. So cool. Yeah, again, as I've said recently, Blue Techno, day job recently gave up the one I was doing because, you know, how shit it was getting, in all honesty. And no, I'm not really intelligent. I'm just somebody that, you know, likes learning stuff. Right, let's try and get this all back together without taking it completely apart. But yeah, never went to university or anything like that. Right, so yeah, this is a semiconductor detector, which is what people speculated online, but I don't know if it says that anywhere. So yeah, they call it a Geiger counter. It's not a Geiger counter, but semiconductor counters are very close to Geiger counters in how they work. And again, I think semiconductor detectors in the future are going to be like the replacement for Geiger counters, but they're not quite there yet, or at least not on the lower budget ones, you know. Because I've got some pretty high-end semiconductor detectors, and they can do like a really big radiation range and are very responsive. But again, the lower end ones like this aren't quite there. But for the price of this does seem pretty damn good. So again, I saw one guy giving this a 1-star review on Amazon. So again, he was going, oh, he was saying how crap it was, and he didn't give any reason why it was crap. So you know, I think he was one of those, and I clicked his profile and all his things like 1-star reviews, whinging about. I think he'd given one item a 5-star review, and then he'd gone like hundreds of 1-star reviews just whinging about, like, in general, the idea that he seems to be one of those people, I think, that expects if you're paying for the lower end of stuff, you should be getting a premium product, which isn't how it works. Whereas something like this seems to be, in my initial like looking at it, very good for what it is, even though again I wish they didn't call it a Geiger counter. I haven't done a YouTube short on it, Saint. That's a very good idea. I might do that tomorrow, even though I was going to film about a 20-minute video tomorrow, a bit like another one you suggested about the government's logic on banning stuff. But yeah, I ought to do one between Geiger counters, semiconductors. Is it semiconductors? I'm doubting myself now. Semiconductor detectors, ionization chambers, spectrometers. Again, it's a bit like the radio code. I keep wanting to call that a Geiger counter, but it's not. It's that's a spectrometer. There's scintillation counters as well. Yeah, again, there's a lot of you know, think, right, because this is a good thick manual, I'm going to see if they actually refer to this as being not a Geiger counter when you read the small print. Because like I said, technically a Geiger counter, even though a semiconductor works in a very similar way, a Geiger counter is called that because it has a Geiger-Müller tube in it. And without a Geiger-Müller tube, it's not a Geiger counter. It's a bit like, you know, I'm trying to think if there's a way with a car, like if there's a particular term for like a petrol, diesel, or like electric engine, and then, you know, somebody calling it like one kind of thing when it's not. Yeah, that's what I was saying, Rajiv. That yeah, it's not actually a Geiger counter though if it has a semiconductor, because you have to have a Geiger-Müller tube to have a Geiger counter. A Geiger-Müller tube is. Do I still have the old one on my desk so I can show you what a GM tube actually is? But they're like the little light bulb looking things, but they're essentially a gas-filled tube. So Geiger tubes themselves are basically a tube that's filled with a noble gas that's very responsive. Yeah, it's that kind of thing, Caesar. I'm just trying to think of a good equivalent where people... It's kind of a bit like how loads of people in the UK called vacuum cleaners Hoovers, even if they weren't Hoover brand ones, where, you know, technically a Hoover would have to be a Hoover brand vacuum cleaner, if you kind of see that thing. It's not a brand thing of Geiger counters, but it's actually one of the components inside them. But yeah, a Geiger counter has essentially got a tube that's filled with a very reactive noble gas. And it's that gas that causes, when radiation hits it, to cascade, that then hits an electric filament that is what is converted into a pulse to give it the reading. And each one of those little pulses is the count, which it's counting, whereas a semiconductor one doesn't work like that. Yeah, it features an imported semiconductor Geiger sensor. So yeah, it's not actually a Geiger counter, but it works like a Geiger counter. Again, some of these where you blur the lines of what is and what isn't is very thing, but it does say that on the spec page. Yeah? I did want to open it up and have a look. But yeah, it's a computer chippy thing that does the job of an old thing that looks a bit like a light bulb. But yeah, Geiger Müller tubes look like little light bulbs, essentially. They've got a filament in them and a bit of gas. No, again, saying the problem is I'm trying to think of a good way of explaining this. So any kind of radiation detector is good to kind of tell you, right, Jorizal. So any kind of radiation detector is kind of good for telling you radiation. So a dosimeter or dosimeter literally means a dose meter. And yes, in theory, you're right. That's what tells you the dose compared to person. But say you just had a Geiger counter with no screen on anything and it just clicked. So let me get, because this one does a nice big loud chunky click. Let's get this one out. And even if we didn't look at the scale with this, so we're going to turn this on and it's going to be clicking. Hopefully you can hear that. It's not clicking as loud as it normally does. But you'd know with a Geiger counter, so let's just put that there, if it will stand up all right, because it's got the, this one's a bit hard to get standing up because of the, and now if I put a strong radiation source to it, you'll see what I mean. That even if you had just a Geiger counter like this in its most pure form, where it ticks and it counts, no, I don't have an oscilloscope, you can tell that radiation level is high because of how fast it's ticking. And although when it gets so close, it saturates and you can't hear it. But yeah. I think I might need new batteries in this thing. But yeah, you can tell that the radiation level is actually high even with a Geiger counter just based on how fast it's ticking. So even though a Geiger counter, yeah, isn't going to tell you how powerful each one of those counts is it like a low damage bit of radiation or a high damage bit of radiation, it is still going to tell you that, you know, there is lots of radiation here. Because yeah, that's another funny thing is in a lot of media, you just have that kind of level of Geiger counter ticking, you like tick, 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 tick. Like, well, if I get the radium dial, a bit like this when there's meant to be really high radiation doses. And like that isn't a really high radiation dose because the counter isn't screaming at you. You can still hear the individual ticks. You know, when the counter makes a screaming noise or it sounds like an A10, you know, an MG42, where you can't hear the individual clicks anymore is when you know it's a really high dose. Because even that is like in media, the highest ever you did hear a Geiger ticking, and that's still not a really scary dose. Like I said, with actual real Geigers, again, saying dosimeter literally just means a dose rate meter. So like I said, the problem is that nearly all modern ones are dosimeters in the sense that they have a dose mode on, because that's kind of been the standard for ages. So yeah, it's again, it's a terminology thing. I'll do a video on it, but again, I don't know if I can even cram all this into a short, in all honesty. But yeah, it's the problem is obviously with all these things, and I'll go to your thing properly in a minute, Kevin. But yeah, probably would be worth $100 just to answer you quickly. But yeah, essentially, there's so many different forms of dose meter, and some of them don't even have to be electronic. Like the ones you see them wearing in the Chernobyl show are those like little badges they've got around their neck, and people still do various forms of that. And it's like that badge just absorbs radiation and has to be put into a reader to tell you, you know, like how much the badge has absorbed. Yeah, those are all just measurements of radiation. And again, you can kind of convert them, but some of them aren't really meant to be converted. But yeah, rad, radiation absorbed dose. Sieverts is named after Sievert. Rontgen is named after Rontgen. But they're all like various things. And again, there's not really a right answer. But yeah, technically, a Geiger counter in itself only does counts per second or counts per minute. And that is literally just how many radiation pulses it detects. And then the reason that, although a lot of them work like dosimeters, or, you know, at least they call them rate meters, they show you the rate of radiation exposure or whatever. The reason, the main downside to a Geiger counter as an actual Geiger counter is a Geiger counter, and probably the same with a semiconductor counter as far as I'm aware, doesn't know how much energy is in each of those pulses. So different radioactive things are kind of different, you know, levels of energy. It's kind of like a weight to speed kind of thing. I'm trying to think of a good way of explaining it. But like, so each count, like, imagine each count is a bullet, a bit like they say in a Chernobyl show. But the thing is, each of those bullets could be like a tiny, tiny speck of sand that you can't even see on the lower energy stuff, or it could be like a fucking truck hitting you, you know, like, or a 50 cal or something. So the Geiger counter just knows stuff's hitting it. It doesn't know how powerful it is. And, you know, obviously, the more counts there are with just how strong the radiation source is generally, the more it overloads. But yeah, the point is that something like Cobalt 60, each of the counts that come off of it are much, much more dangerous per like one of the ticks on the Geiger counter than something like natural uranium. So, you know, the ticking of a Geiger counter, and the problem is with like a lot of the ones where the Geiger counter then, you know, converts it into a thing, they've based that on either normally cesium-137 or Cobalt 60. So unless you know that what you're being exposed to is, say, cesium-137 on one that's calibrated to cesium-137, the reading you're getting in dose thing doesn't, it could be higher or lower. But, you know, it's still a good ballpark thing to go off of. No, it depends. Say, stuff like that depends more entirely on what the detection mechanism is on them. Because, like I said, the most expensive counter I've got, and the one that's actually probably my best counter, although it doesn't go to the highest doses, is a Fluke ionization chamber that's designed for like hospitals and research labs and things like that. And that is like pinpoint accurate and actually knows how much energy is going into it. You know, like in the levels of radiation that are lower than background. So I think that one's in sieverts rather than Rontgen. I think that one goes up to about 5 Rontgen. And then I've got another digital one that isn't as accurate as it, that goes up to about 50 Rontgen. But yeah, it's basically each kind of detectors have their pros and cons. But there's lots of them that are good enough if you want them as a prepper type person. That would, well, any of them, like I said, any of them are kind of good for that, because this is the thing. If Putin loses the plot and nukes you, and, you know, you were wandering around some nuclear wasteland, a Geiger counter just ticking, if it starts ticking faster, you know it's getting more dangerous. You know, they still work like that. Yeah, exactly. Same. The one I got, it's one of the most expensive ones I've ever bought. And bear in mind, I bought it when I was still working basically full time. And that was about £700, basically new secondhand. It just didn't have any calibration certificates with it. If I was to buy that same detector, like with calibration secondhand, that would be a couple of grand, even though because it's digital, it's not going to actually decalibrate. That's the thing I love about the digital counters, that once they've been set, they're set. So it doesn't actually matter about the calibration documents. And it's an ionization chamber as well. So they kind of don't need calibration, but again, it's a bit hard to explain on that. And if I was to buy it brand new from Fluke, that would have been like 5 to 10 grand sort of price. But like I said, that's my one for like really, really interesting scientific, like nerdy shit. Because I've got a couple of detectors like that. And then there's other detectors I prefer as just kind of like rugged military ones. That's probably your best bet, Ex-Mariner. Again, there's PAPR ones, like positive air pressure respirators, where you have the air pump with them. That would work as well if you have a beard of a regular mask, as long as the pump's strong enough. Because as long as the pressure inside the mask is then greater than the outside of a PAPR, it would work fine. But, yeah. But yeah, so this AEG test thing, I don't know if it's actually any more advanced than the older Chinese one I've got. It's definitely got a nicer interface on this. Like I said, the counts on there seem a bit weird because, like I said, this is something that doesn't click like a Geiger counter trying to imitate a Geiger counter's clicks. Because again, its counts per minute thing is very odd on there, because 3 CPM would be impossible to have at normal background levels of a Geiger counter. But this obviously has a different metric of CPM to absorbed energy. But yeah, this does seem very good. Like I said, a bit like that FS5000 that I reviewed recently. That's another very good one at this price range. But this, although it's probably, like I was going to say, it's a lower end semiconductor one, but semiconductors in general are better than Geiger-Müller tubes. They're going to replace them eventually. It's, you know, it's one of those things where I'd still recommend this for the price. Very, very good, especially because that's the price for the end user with the plastic box and everything on Amazon. You know, it's not like you're picking it up on AliExpress even cheaper from, yeah, radio codes are very good. And again, not a Geiger counter. So if I get my radio code out, I've got one there. Radio codes, and a bit like the not GQGMC, the Measle spectrometer I've got over there. These, although it might quack like a duck and all that sound like a Geiger counter, this is actually a spectrometer. So it uses, rather than the Geiger-Müller tube, this has like a little crystal in it that absorbs gamma rays. You know, it's like a type of crystal that reacts to radiation. But what's really cool about a spectrometer is because it can see a spectrum, like that, in its old like Nokia style looking display. Don't know what that's going to show up for you on the camera. That means it actually, when it's telling you how much you're being exposed to on this, it actually knows the energy and therefore translates it into dose. So if this gets hit by an X-ray, it knows the difference between a single count from an X-ray and a single count from cobalt-60, say. Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that are scary, Saint, in the sense that their half-lives are long enough that they're going to cause a problem, but they're short enough that they're still very, very powerful. Because in general, the shorter the half-life, the more dangerous something is. But yeah, the reason a lot of those are dangerous is just because they're very good at getting into the body, or they're hard to avoid. Because, yeah, stuff like natural uranium, you can be exposed to it in bits of granite, and it's, you know, got half-lives of thousands or millions of years or whatever. So, you know, every couple of million years, it gets half as powerful. But, you know, if it's something that's barely dangerous anyway, it doesn't matter. The problem is, yeah, with some of the stuff that's in Fallout, like that stuff you mentioned, is, and I don't mean Fallout like the game or the show, I mean Fallout as in nuclear fallout after a bomb blast or, you know, a reactor accident or whatever. The reason that stuff is scary is because it's very easy to get inside your body, or, you know, the doses are going to be very high. But again, with the half-lives on lots of things, like say even with a nuclear accident, is if you're in a bomb shelter, there's a thing like if you came out after a day, the radiation would still be a lot less than if you were there, you know, on the first day. Then after a couple of days, again, it's still better. A week, it's better again. You know, 2 weeks, it's better again. But again, say cesium-137 and that landed all around you. If you came out your bomb shelter after a year, that stuff still has a half-life of what, like 30 years. So you're still fucked in a sense if there's enough of it around. Yeah, again, I've got what's the old iPod I've got? I think it's the iPod Classic, like one of the actual good Apple products, in my opinion. Because, yeah, before, you know, like the ones that actually had good internal memory and it did the job of what it was meant to do very well, you know. Because the problem, I think, with a lot of the iPods is they eventually turned into kind of like early smartphones, didn't they, without any of the phone kind of stuff. They did everything, but they were very expensive and then weren't good on battery life. Whereas the reason I like the iPod Classic or whatever it is, which I've still got somewhere, is just the sheer storage size it has. Yeah, it's inverse square law. Yeah, Saint, which basically the easiest way of explaining this is if you shine a torch beam in the dark, you know how torch beams or light basically spread out as they go apart, but they get dimmer. So it's very easy if you can consider gamma rays and X-rays to visible light, because they are light energy. So yeah, the thing is, as you get further away, it's spreading out, and yes, the dose is getting less. So it is something like a factor of 4. So it's inverse square law. So you'd be amazed with radiation how much more dangerous some stuff is at like a few centimeters to a meter to then say at 10 meters and 100 meters. And that's why with a lot of bunkers and shielding, the idea isn't that you've got really, really thick bits of lead. The idea is that you're just far enough away from a radiation source that it's lost the majority of its power. Let me demonstrate inverse square law to you with the radio code right now. I won't use this one. I will use the... Right, let's get the radium dial and put that facing upwards like that as best I can, because this isn't going to sit, you know, this sits at like a slight angle. Right, let me put the speaker on this so you hear the ticking, because you're going to need the ticking for me to demonstrate this. But yeah, I think I can turn that on in this. Settings, signals, sound, vibro, light, clicks. That's what I want. Right. Right. So let's now go into monitor. Right. So again, this might be a bit hard to show, but the closer this gets in, notice how much faster the clicks start going up. And then the alarm's gone off. But yeah, so, and this updates very quickly. And this is very accurate for this because it's mostly gamma coming off of this range. So at this range, I'm holding it, and there's other sources that are fucking about with it. It's 0.7 microsieverts. Move it about this much more forwards. Hold it steady. It's gone up to 0.9. Move it a bit further forwards again. 2. It's gone to 2.5 now. Move it forwards another few inches again. 6.9, 7.4, 8. Move it even closer. 20, 20 odd. Put it point blank. 70, 80. Yeah, going into the 90s. So yeah, inverse square law, the easiest way of thinking about it, yeah, if I just hold this there. Yeah, I've got that. It's very useful for testing stuff. But yeah, if you listen to that, as I bring it in, I'll keep turning the alarm off. Yeah, and when it's at point blank, it's getting about 120 off of this. So you see how something like this is giving 120 off about there, but if you're that far away from it, you're barely getting anything off of it. You're getting some stuff off of it, but nowhere near as much. So that's the inverse square law thing, basically saying that distance is the easiest thing you can do to protect yourself from radiation. Yeah, and that's a good point as well, Kevin. Yet no SIM card, no tracking stuff like that, no internet. You can just have it in your pocket, yeah, and be untraceable. Only way of picking you up with that would be a very strong EMF meter. And again, that wouldn't tell anything about you. It just tells you there's something electronic in the thing. We were talking about radiation for the most part, smokes MG42. But yeah, radio codes, if you're wanting to spend a bit more than, say, £50, if you're getting into the just over £100 price range, this is still probably my favorite thing in that sort of price range. And again, radio codes, the Visa bought the really sensitive one recently. And yeah, apparently that's really good in terms of the distance. It actually knows that you're finding stuff. But yeah, I suppose in some ways, Saint, as well, going back to the different type of detectors, when they used to be a lot more specialized before you had better, more modern electronics, you know, where they did a wider range of things, a Geiger counter is a bit like a, what do you want to call it? So I'm trying to think of like distances where, so, but I'm gonna do it the opposite way around. Well, let's say, so if, because you've got some that are like really good for finding stuff up close and stuff for like, you know, a general broad area. Because ionization chambers used to be really accurate for high doses of radiation, but they weren't sensitive. And again, that's not a thing anymore. Because like I said, the modern Fluke one and the Victorine one I've got that are electric, not electric, they're all electric, but you know what I mean, like digital and all microprocessors and very high tech in there. They're very, very sensitive. It's a bit like saying, what do you want? Binoculars or a microscope or a magnifying glass, that kind of thing. Really, you want something of variable zoom that can do everything, which we're getting a bit more and more now. Then it's like stuff like the radio code is very good at, you know, multi-rolling at lots of things. But yeah, it's one of those things, Saint, where you've got stuff that, you know, some stuff is very good for the up close stuff, some stuff is very good for the kind of, like I said, some stuff is good for finding like radiation, like, oh, I found a little radiation hotspot, isn't that cool? That's a lot more what Geiger counters and spectrometers used to be used for. And then ionization chambers used to be the, oh shit, how dead am I levels of radiation. Yeah, I mean, the Soviet DP ones, depends which DP model. The DP5, for example, is a Geiger counter with 2 different Geiger tubes in. So it's got different ranges on it. So the idea of the DP5 is it's very, the easiest one to explain this is of the old US CDs compared to those. So the US had the CDV 700, which was the Geiger counter, and the US CDV 715, which is one the ionization chamber. And the CDV 700, the Geiger counter, was for basically less than background radiation up to, I think it was 50 millirontgen. Whereas the CDV 715, the lowest range is basically like in the hundreds of millirontgen. And it's basically in the Rontgen range. So again, it's like, yeah, microscope versus telescope. DP, Soviet DP ones, Smokers, what I was just saying is they're basically, that was the Soviet like name for their dosimeters. Like obviously in Cyrillic they weren't DP, but you know when you translate it's DP, and I think it literally means radiation dosimeter or something when you translate each of the characters. But they were just their big various series of like all their radiation instruments were normally called DP something. Like the DP2 was an ionization chamber that was man-portable. The DP3 was the vehicle-based ionization chamber. The DP5 was the later one that was meant to be for like general use, like where it had the 2 Geiger counter tubes in and switches for various ranges. DP63 was the very little lightweight one that had only 2 ranges on. But yeah. But yes, but let's say we compared a Soviet DP2 or US CDV 715 to my Fluke one. They're both ionization chambers, but the Fluke one is designed to be super sensitive to background all the way up to, like I said, it maxes out, I think, about the equivalent of 5 Rontgen, the Fluke. Whereas with the US CDV 715s and that, and the DP2, you can't even tell there's radiation with those until you get into really dangerous levels of radiation, because they're designed for after a blast where there's always going to be dangerous levels of radiation. Yeah, the main problem with DPs now, Saint, and all those things like the Polish DP66 and DP75s is, even though I think they're very good units, you have to be aware that the electronics inside have gotten pretty old. So unless you're into electronics and soldering and doing replacements, the main problem I've had with a lot of those old meters is sometimes they can work fine for a bit and then something burns out. And then you're going to have to find a replacement part that's close enough to the old Soviet, like capacitor or whatever, to solder in. Whereas obviously the modern stuff is good in the sense that it's all good modern electronics and you don't have to fucking worry at all about, you know, bits just dying due to age. Because so many of the old detectors I bought, you know, worked when I first turned them on, and then, you know, I'd come back to them at a later point and something had broken on them just because, you know, like parts just dying of age. And especially I think once they've got to that age where they're basically dead, the old parts are long since expired, they sometimes work when you first turn them on, and then it's a bit like, you know, a bulb where you flick it on and it burns out. So yeah, but again, like this one's very, very good, but expensive. And again, lots of US places still use these, although there was a shitty soldering job in that, so I had to kind of fix that. But this, let's put the rate on for it so we can hear it when it ticks. But this is the US one that's basically up to stupidly dangerous levels of radiation. With a little digital display, does background to stupidly dangerous levels. If I get that radium dial out again. The really cool feature on this one, but I don't know if I've got it. Yeah, I don't have it set to a low enough parameter. You see where it says 999 there? You can have it set to stay time. So what that means is if you're exposed, it depends what you've obviously got your threshold set to. But it shows you in minutes how long you've got counting down till you hit like a whatever radiation level you set as your threshold. This thing I was showing off just now, Smoke MG42. There was also a cheapo compass I want to do a proper video on, but the problem is there's so many electronics in this room that a lot of compasses malfunction in this fucking room when I want to test them anyway. So it's not one I can really test unless I take it into a different room to use properly. And again, that is one of the things, though, I do really like with this old British Army one, is that, like I said, it doesn't seem to fuck up with magnetic fields unless they're really strong. Because, like I said, this one, let's see, so have it that way. That should be facing west. Yeah, if I place it that way, should go east. Yeah, this one turns the way it should, even if there's magnetic fields. Like, I think they'd have to be really strong to fuck with this one. Whereas, like I said, some of the other magnets, not magnets, compasses I've got have issues with magnetic fields. And obviously compasses will, because that's how compasses work. But, you know, it's one of those things that's a bit annoying. Oh, actually, I did have a Geiger tube on my desk, Saint. There you go. There's an old East German Geiger Miller tube. But, again, you can't see the inside of that because it's not a glass one. So they don't have to be glass. This one, for example, is like metal that's obviously been sealed, and then they've like injected, you know, they've done it in one of those pressure chambers and then sealed it up where it's got a gas inside. But essentially, it's got a filament that runs through there. They're very much, think how a light bulb looks. That's what a Geiger tube essentially is. I mean, I could just get you some pictures of Geiger tubes up. But, yeah, so if you search... I wonder if you just on Google, on Google, go on Google Images and just type in glass Geiger tube, and then you'll see exactly what a Geiger tube is. A lot of the ones coming up are the Chinese ones and some old Soviet SI-21BGs. But essentially, they are just like a light bulb. They work in a different way, except for giving out light. They're detecting light, but light isn't, you know, visible light. It's radiation. I kind of think of them like reverse light bulbs. That's kind of a way of thinking of a Geiger tube. Sort of, maybe that makes sense. Well, again, with a lot of this stuff, it makes sense to me, but it's one of those things I don't know how good of a teacher I am with this stuff, because that's the thing, isn't it? Sometimes, like, if somebody's knowledgeable on the subject, you can say stuff and they know enough to know what you mean, whereas sometimes if you're not explaining it very well, it's probably going to confuse people even more. But yeah, I filmed a couple of videos today on helmets, and like I said, I do need to do that video you're on about as well before Saint, but that's going to be a longer widescreen one like this, but not a stream about the UK banning mentality. I've got an EMF detector somewhere, or a couple of them, but I haven't used them in ages because I don't believe in well, like I said, I kind of do believe in ghosts, but oh yeah, funny enough, there's the fucker. That's a Chinese Geiger Miller tube. These are actually pretty good. They're in a lot of the Chinese Geigers. They're the Chinese kind of equivalent to the Soviet SBM-20. But yeah, it's essentially just a glass filament tube, and basically any radiation hits the gas, is multiplied by the gas, cascades, and hits that wire running through the middle, and then it's counted as a pulse by the thing. Oh, that's interesting. My detector here has just started going up for no reason. I wonder what set that off. Oh. It's not this tube, is it? Shouldn't be anything in there setting it off. Yeah, that dose rate suddenly jumped up, and I'm wondering what's setting it off. Because none of my other counters have... Oh, it's gone down now. But yeah, something then made that one go a bit crazy, and I'm wondering what did it. Interesting. But yeah, so like I said, these are just essentially, they work a bit like light bulbs. But yeah, EMF detectors, like I said, the place that we thought was haunted at work, I went around with EMF detector and didn't find anything too weird with an EMF detector. The main thing I like using EMF detectors for is more just figuring out about the strength of like Wi-Fi signals and radio signals, and if there's a wire behind where you're going to drill in a wall, because an EMF detector is pretty, although it's not the same thing as, you know, like a wall drilling wire detector, EMF detectors kind of do that. Yeah, they're very, very cool. Cloud chambers. Yeah. Have you ever seen a really good cloud chamber video for radon gas? Let me find one if you haven't, because they're fucking insane. They're really cool to look at. There's also a kind of detector, and I'm trying to remember what they're called. I think it's like a spark detector or something, where a really high electrical field, like you can see the radiation turning into sparks as it hits the field. All right, this is a short. All right, I'm just gonna click through this and see if it looks like they're oh yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to sort of show you, and this one's been filmed quite well. So this actually looks like advanced tinkering. Looks like, assuming it's not a channel, it just re-uploads other people's content. This looks quite well filmed. So yeah, essentially, does this even show you in there, like him essentially taking radon out of a sealed jar? If so, that's actually pretty cool. Yeah, so he's injecting it into a sealed jar with like uranium in or something, pulling that up. So yeah, he's pulling the sealed radon out of the thing. So again, radon builds up in enclosed spaces if there's a radiation source, like radium or uranium, because it's a decay product of radium. And then there's the going to inject it into the cloud chamber. As you can see in that cloud chamber, just some random particles anyway, which will probably be background radiation. And then, yeah, if he's injecting it in, you'll see the really cool cascade thing as the radon goes through. And you can then use that to visualize why your lungs would be absolutely fucked if you got radon in your lungs. Like what it's, because you can actually see it just going through it. Yeah, that's actually a very, very good demonstration video, that one. You can, a lot of chemical detectors are very expensive, Saint, and I think they're like designed for specific chemicals. So like militaries have like the chemical weapon detectors, and I've never really seen those surplus for under $1,000. And I wouldn't have a way of testing them either. That's the one thing. Mine was on eBay, where I think I bought it from Germany, the new recruit. When you say Chinese bulbs, you on about the Geiger counter tubes? If so, they're very easy to get. You can buy them in bulk on AliExpress. But yeah, mine was from a German seller years ago that was selling them probably from a load of ones from, where US troops are stationed in Germany, and then was selling off their old surplus. No room for them. That's the problem. I've got industrial shelving racking in another room and loads of tote containers, but, even then that isn't really practical for all my shit. Like I said, I'm getting rid of stuff rather than getting stuff for the most part soon. The thing is, the SGE 400s and that I've never seen in the UK, so I can't really tell you if I think they're any good or not. I like the look of them, but if the MSA Millennium is in good nick, surplus, I'd just go for that for 100, because I like the MCU 2P, and the Millennium is just the improved version of that. So if you've got a Millennium that's not horribly discolored or whatever and looks in good condition, for $100, that sounds really good. Again, like the SGEs looked cool when I've seen them and that, but I don't think I've ever seen them for sale in the UK, or not for prices that aren't, like people importing them and then scalping them kind of thing. But yeah, like I said, if you're in the UK, a lot of American stuff is quite hard to get, because even when it's not ITAR restricted stuff, it's just the cost of paying the fucking shipping and taxes to get it from the US. Because like when we were on about the compasses earlier, so like with the compass I was showing, wherever I put that fucking compass down now, that's great, isn't it? I've put it down on the table somewhere probably and lost it. Did I put it underneath the... Oh, there it is. So like with this, rip-off of the US military compass, it isn't as well built. If I was to buy from the US, like, this is the British Army one, but this, like, the proper surplus one of these, but from, like, you know what I mean? If I was to buy the proper surplus one from the US, let's ignore the British Army compass for a minute, that was the real deal from a surplus seller, there were ones that definitely had them in for not stupid money, but then the postage and tax made the item like 4 times as expensive. So yeah, that's the main thing that annoys me of a lot of these sort of things, is just the fact that yeah, if you're in the UK, even when stuff isn't ITAR restricted from the States, it's just the shipping and like taxes on it that when it comes out, and this is before Trump fucked everything up with tariffs even more. It's just, that's all right, Stalker. So yeah, it's just one of those annoying things. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's still the case, but yeah, let's have a look while I'm here. So ebay.de, let's go on there, because that's the German eBay, ebay.de, and then search M40. Now, they might list it as gas mask, but otherwise we might have to translate gas mask from German. Yeah, right. Let's translate gas mask. It's probably just gas mask, isn't it? But like with MASKE and maybe a different spelling of gas. I can't remember, but I think it is literally like gas mask. But sometimes that, again, it depends if somebody's called it a respirator or a gas mask. Yeah, gas masky. Yeah, so gas with one S, same as English. It's literally gas mask with an E on the end with one thing. Because I thought it was something like that in German. So, but yeah, let's put M40 gas mask in on that. No, there's still nobody of them currently on German eBay. But like I said, at one point, that was a really easy place to get them by comparison, just because it seemed a lot of them were being essentially like demobbed and sold on from the, like not West German army. And I mean, it's obviously not West Germany anymore, just modern Germany. But yeah, it was just a case that, obviously, because there's a lot of US troops stationed in Germany. You'd like see them in Humvees and that when I was in Germany, just because. But we don't really have a very big US presence at all in the UK anymore. Like they've got a lot of staff over here doing secretive stuff, and they do have like air bases and that for moving stuff. But it's not like you just have a lot of troops stationed, kind of because we're not going to be the invasion point of somewhere. No, I don't have an eBay store. I mean, I technically do, but not really when I mostly use eBay for buying stuff. And like I said, I don't know if a lot of stuff I'm going to sell is going to be through eBay. Because like I said, if I want to get rid of a lot of stuff, again, I probably will use eBay. But the problem is, like I said, is because I'm sort of famous, and this is the problem I've already had with eBay, is you'll get people that will use it to fuck with you if they know it's you selling the stuff, which is what's really annoying about it. So I bet you if people knew it was me listing an item, you'd get somebody that would buy it and then try and cancel the payment or say it won't arrive. Because, they'll do it. It's like where the guy damaged an item when he knew it was me that was buying it. And then you had my address on record and then used it to dox me, the guy that reported me to the police. So, that's the problem with like eBay is that because you get some spiteful cunts online, I kind of have to sell a lot of this stuff anonymously or in person. And again, the way that would be really good for me to sell a load of shit is like where I went to like that military fair the other week. Would be if I could get down to one of those at some point with like a van, pay the thing for setting up a table and then just try and move as much stock as possible for, not asking loads of money for it, but just selling it at an arms fair. No, not got any spare MM1s for sale, I'm afraid. Again, I'm not the sort of person you want to be asking for, do you have this for sale or have that for sale? Because like I said, what I'm going to probably be doing is just clearing out stuff and then thinking, is this something I'm going to do many videos with or whatever? If not, let me see if I can list it for sale somewhere and just move it. Because recently I just did that where I asked people I knew in person. Because a lot of stuff I end up selling, what I do first before I ever go to eBay or anything like that, is I'll send PMs to any of my mates that I know are into surplus. And I'll say, is this of interest to you? If so, I'll do it at mates rate so I can get an easy sale. And sometimes they say yes, and then I say, like, if it's even like a 50 to 100 quid item, give me a 20 for it. You can have it, sold as seen. And that's kind of why I like the military fair idea of just, literally having the stuff there saying you can have a look at it in person, sold as seen. I'll do it at quite a good price, just so I get rid of stuff. Yeah, it's one of those things where I guess they've never really tried to sell it on our market, Kevin, in big numbers. Yeah, out of a suitcase. But yeah, like car boot. You park your car, you open the boot, you've got all the stuff lined up. I mean, car boot sales are normally where you have a table and you put the table out and then put the stuff. But yeah. But yeah, which one is, again, I'm going to look up the SG400 just to make sure I'm thinking of the right mask. Because there's a couple of masks. No, I put S on there, Google. But yeah, because the SGE is the one, isn't it, where, like I said, there's a couple of Chinese masks that have almost the same face piece to that, even though I know that those are meant to be quite good and they are actually made, like I said, by an Italian company. So it's not like an Italian company drop ships them from China. Like I said, sadly, they've not been out. I think it's more likely the Chinese ripped off the SGE and have just done quite a good rip off of it, or used some of the face piece for a rip off. But yeah, and you can get that. What I like with that one is like, yeah, the ones with all the blanking plugs where you can have the filter on the front or the sides or whatever, depending on how you want to set it up. But yeah, for $100, I go for the MSA Millennium. At least I know what it is. What are you buying? Yeah, that wouldn't make people think it's GIMP gear at all, would it? If you did that. Open your flasher coat up and you've got all of these rubber bits in there. Ah, got an S10 on sale, stranger. Yeah, it's sort of the other way around, although the Italians have ripped off, like I said, the M90 is really weird, where it rips off the S6 with its eyepieces and, you know, all that. But yeah, like I keep saying to people, though, over here, is that stuff like the Chinese MF14 is genuinely fucking good if you want a cheap mask that actually works. Problem is with the Diax Saint, dirty, Caesar says. Have you seen Inbred, Caesar? Because when everybody says they're dirty, I always think of that. Dirty, dirty. Oh, you got a dirty mouth. I'll sort you out. Yeah, that was a joke, Zed Ghostive, or I guess Zed Ghost 7 or whatever. Problem is with the Diax Saint, a lot of them I can't sell legally without having them Diax, which then means I have to that will cost me like a couple £100 per gun. Depending on which gun it is, that might not mean I even get a profit. I might make a loss out of it. So the Diax are one of those bloody annoying things where unless I just fucking illegally sold them to people I know, cash in hand, which is what most people do with Diax, I wouldn't be getting rid of them because of the fact that where they constantly change the fucking rules on how Diax they have to be. Because at least with Diax, they did have the grandfathering law, which I wish they did with the blank guns and everything else, that even when they made some of the Diax be strict to Diax, they said, if you already own them, that's fine. You just can't sell them without having them re-Diaxed. I don't really know, Saint. I thought there was a weird clause they made for old specs to say, because they kept some value, you could keep them like that. Again, this has gone up a little bit again. Why is this randomly going up now and then? I think there is something else this is picking up, and I can't figure out what it is. It might be that one of the disadvantages of the semiconductor one is that there's other stuff it now and again picks up that it thinks is ionizing radiation that isn't. Like, I'm wondering if there's like a bit of an EMF kind of effect going on with this. And like I said, the ticking thing annoys me on this because I will turn the ticking off because of the, like, at least when I'm using it properly from, you know, after I've done a video on it. Because like I said, it's cool, it can imitate a Geiger counter's clicks, but because the click rate is based on a different thing, you know, the ticks are a completely different kind of interval-y type thing. So anyway, let's turn this off. Actually, I might just hold that down. I'll put this all back away in its box now. But yeah, this does seem a genuinely nice meter. And like I said, this would actually be good for detecting radiation. It's just, I don't know if it's what a lot of people would want. But right, I'm hoping even with a lanyard on, this goes back properly in its case, and it looks like it will. So, see if that closes up properly still. Yeah, it does. Good. So yeah, that does come with a nice little case. So like I said, I do like this. I think for the money, this is quite good, and it will be good to do both a shorts and a longer length review on, because that's the sort of thing I think a lot of people would watch on something like this. But yeah, it's definitely not the 1-star thing that guy was whinging about on it. Actually, I'm going to look up the review for that, and I'll read it out to you out loud where this guy was whinging on it. Because I'm interested in reading what his complaints were with it. He also had a complaint. He gave the GMC 800 a 1-star review as well. And his review for that was some like fucking bollocks, like, oh, even though it's got a carry case that you can attach to your belt and everything else, I can't put a lanyard on the meter itself, so therefore the meter is useless. Well, no, you can keep it in the carry case then, which has got a transparent front, and you can read it, and then you can just put a lanyard on the carry case, can't you? Right, let's read his 1-star review if I can find it. 1 star. Right, this guy. Cognitive economy. Don't be fooled by its nice box and the unit's exterior design. That's where the good bits end. This is undoubtedly a very nice looking unit, and in many ways its exterior design is quite practical, but its insides let it down. Very slow to react and highly inaccurate. Again, pretty accurate on the regular radiation stuff, not on the kind of more intense stuff. But again, it's probably meant more for gamma and X-rays anyway. And annoyingly, it ticks randomly rather than in synchronization with the particle counts displayed on the screen. Now, it does do it with the particle counts on the screen, but the particle counts, again, are quite low. It's a strange, like, maths it uses. And again, where you're saying it was too slow to react, it's as fast as you're going to get on a meter in that price range. But I bet this guy was too fucking stupid, in all honesty, to put on the fast mode. He probably kept it in the slow mode and then complained that slow mode is slow. The AEG is also a bit of clever marketing, but I'm sure the white good manufacturer doesn't think so. Wow, AEG just sounds like an acronym of a company. So again, it's probably got nothing to do with AEG if there's an AEG that does washing machines and fridges. In short, it's not what it appears to be. Would I recommend it to a friend? Sadly, no. And there's some other reviews saying it just doesn't work at all or whatever, which it does, or they got a dead unit or whatever. But yeah, so again, I think that guy is disingenuous or doesn't know how to review something. No, I've barely seen anything about Resident Evil 9. Might have a look at it. I don't generally pre-order games anymore. I normally wait till a game comes out, see if it gets really good reviews, then see if it's worth the money. Normally now games are so inflated in price, they're not worth the money. And I've got such a backlog of other games. Don't get me wrong, like Resident Evil Village I thought was very good when that came out not too long ago. And there's a few of the other Resident Evils I've really enjoyed. But again, I always now tend to wait for stuff to come out just because even companies that make good games, and I trust the companies, quite often at the moment still you get games where, you know, the day of release, there's still a fucking dumpster fire of poor release, poor, you know. Is that the first or second bit of the 28 years later thing? Because I still haven't seen the other one if they did release one about a year ago. Yeah, saying, I'll sell you a new old spec, no problem. Yeah, not saying he's doing anything illegal. I'm sure it's not, but again, some of the laws and all the shit we have in this country is so fucking confusing, and they like it that way on purpose. So they filmed them back to back, but then like waited a year to release the second bit. Right, I get you. Maybe I'll wait till both bits come out and then watch them back to back. Let's see if I can see anything about Resident Evil 9. All right, Rich, I've been on over an hour, so I'll probably be off quite soon. So is it RE9 or Resident Evil 9? They're calling it probably Resident Evil 9. Resident Evil 9. Nothing's come out. Is it Resident Evil Requiem? Yeah, it comes out in February, so it'll be Resident Evil Requiem. So it's got like Leon in the background. It's got a woman. Leon's got a bit of stubble. I'm not looking at any videos at the moment. I'm just looking at some pictures. But again, the pictures are there's a proper looking mansion-y kind of place. That's interesting. So what's the so it's set in Raccoon City after they nuke it. That looks interesting. Like I said, it might be quite interesting, but again, what sort of gameplay does it look like it has? Like more like Resident Evil 7, more like Resident Evil Village and 4? So to be honest, I actually think I prefer the more action-y Resident Evils and the survival horror ones. Is there actually a gameplay trailer of it, though? Because again, that's like I said, that's what it would be. So that trailer looks more like it's not any gameplay. No, suddenly it's not any gameplay on Steam. It looks all just like, you know, the very nice sort of bull shots, or whatever you want to call them. I know it's actually going to be in-game stuff, so it's not really a bull shot. But you know what I mean? I always like now just looking at fucking actual gameplay videos of games to work out if it's something I want to play or not. Yeah, Resident Evil 4, the remake of that was very good, even though a lot of people whinged about it. And the like some Resident Evil Village was the other very good one I thought out of the recent lot. Yeah, that's really annoying, Rich. I did notice with a couple of channels I'm subbed to as well, I'd actually been fucking unsubbed from them. Like, not just the bell had turned off or whatever, or I wasn't getting notifications. Like, it had actually unsubscribed me, despite the fact they're channels I like. Yeah, RE4 Original is also very good, yeah. Oh, what, so is it one where it's in first person and third person? That's kind of good. Like, again, I like it when games give you the option and you don't have to mod that in. Right, Ryla? Yeah, Resident Evil 0 was on GameCube, wasn't it? And the really good remake before Remake had the PC like release of it and everything. Like the first Resident Evil remake. But yeah, the Resident Evil 1 remake was actually really good when I only got around to playing it a few years ago. I'd actually, though, what I'd really want, though, personally, is like a Resident Evil 1 remake, like how they did the remake, you know, that one, but in first person, even if it's like very survivally with the low bullet counts and everything, a bit more like Resident Evil 7. But I just prefer the first person ones to the fucking tank controls. And again, I don't dislike the old Resident Evils, but they're a product of their time, and I don't think the tank controls work very well, which is why I definitely like the RE2 over the shoulder thing they did when they did, you know, that's why I think the Resident Evil 2 remake did so well, because it's just a much better form of gameplay, I'd say. What? Oh, Breath of the Wild. I thought, is that best or the worst? As in Red Letter Media? I thought that's surely not what you mean. But yeah, I think the 2 remake was the one they did really, really well. And like the others have probably fallen a bit short, even if I like them. I think the 3 remake was the one that was probably the most disappointing. And even then, I still enjoyed it. It's just that there was quite a bit of the original Resident Evil 3 Nemesis that wasn't in it, or they changed, and I don't see why they changed it. And it seemed very short. I know Resident Evil Nemesis is a lot shorter than Resident Evil 2, I think, anyway, if you like speedrun them. But still, again, it's worth playing. It's just one of those ones for the price. I think everybody thought it'd be like the same level of details as Resident Evil 2 remake. Cheers, 7G9FOV. But yeah, because the other thing as well is like how Mr. X chased you everywhere in Resident Evil, the Resident Evil 2 remake. I was really hoping that Nemesis, rather than like turning up for a load of boss battles, was going to be like a persistent fucking threatening thing. I don't think it's anything to do with employees doing it, Zach, because that would be way too much effort for them to go through loads of channels and do that. I think it's just probably bad coding or like, you know, some stupid algorithm thing they've done of like, oh, you're not watching this channel enough recently, so let's unsub you kind of thing. Or this channel's done things that we don't like with the algorithm, so let's unsub people. In which particular one, Caesar? Yeah, the Code Veronica, though, has a man cross-dressing in, doesn't it? Or something like that, if I remember right. There's a line about a cross-dressing freak or something in it, which I think would not go down well with all the wokies today. And the funny thing is, I've got a couple of mates that are trans, like both way round, you know, female to male and male to female, because I don't really give a shit about, you know, gay people and trans stuff. Like I said, as long as somebody's a decent person, I don't give a shit. And they probably just find a line like that funny, but it's the people that get offended on other people's behalf. It's a bit like if there's a slightly racist joke in something. None of the people I know that are like black or whatever, yeah, that's it, Rajiv. None of the people would actually get offended like that by like, you know, a funny like kind of racist joke if they're actually black or whatever, if they know it's been done in good humor or whatever. But then there'll be some Karen going, oh my god, we have to have this cancelled because they've said something offensive and it's just making white supremacy and Trump, Hitler's gonna come back. Yeah, oh, well, Surviving Edge Weapons you can actually watch on YouTube, the actual proper thing that they did in Best of the Worst, yeah. But I've actually linked people to Surviving Edge Weapons because it's a really fucking good little thing, isn't it? Especially the bits about the engagement distance, you know. Because even obviously in the UK, you're not going to be drawing on somebody. That is really fucking good to know, like how quickly, you know, the distance before you wouldn't be able to react to somebody. Because that bit, even if you were pulling out, like you know, or I've done the things on the stab-proof panels in a bag or whatever, that's still relevant to that because, like, again, if you had a bag like that, that still makes you think, how quickly would I need to be able to bring my arm up or bring, you know, like a bag up with stuff in to shield myself if somebody's going to pull a knife on me or whatever. So even though you're not drawing to shoot, it's still basically the same logic, isn't it? Like, you know, it does just make you think about concealed blades and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, that's the thing, Rajib. Like I said, it's always, like I said, it's always when I've run into stuff, people getting offended on other people's behalf, not, you know, I mean, and there's times when I've done that, but that's when I've found people to be like really, really fucking racist to the point I thought these people are fucking scum, you know. I knew DMC was meant to be quite a different game, but yeah. Let me find it for you, Zach. You do see real dead people, just to warn you, in that video, but it is all allowed on YouTube for whatever reason, because it is much more a training kind of film. Surviving Edged Weapons, 1988. There's an upload by Mr. Bloodclot, featured on Red Letter Media's Everything is an Edged Weapon, Everyone is Carrying One. It's a Caliber Press video. But yeah, and there's other little clips of it on there. But yes, you'd want to watch the full thing. So it's probably the one uploaded 4 years ago. It's probably on other sites as well. But yeah, it's basically like a police training film about, you know, like how to, like, you know, be on your guard if you're approaching somebody who might be concealed carrying a knife, how they can conceal carry knives, you know, like about, because you might have seen the clips, like I said, the bit about the guy pulling the knife and charging at somebody, that is the bit that I saw the clips of that before I'd even seen the Red Letter Media thing or the actual video, you know. But it's that bit had actually made its way onto other media, but I hadn't seen all the other stuff from Surviving Edge Weapons. But that's really interesting to know. It's like the different distances of how fucked you are if somebody pulled a knife and went for you at various ranges, you know. And it's like, how many feet or meters was it? You have to be quite a good distance from somebody before somebody with good reaction times is actually able to react fast enough. Whereas, you know, if it's a skilled knifeman and you're within like 10 meters or something, unless you're superhuman fucking reflexes, you're fucked, because that person can be having a knife into you before you're even aware that they've kind of pulled it, kind of thing. It's a bit like, you know, with an animal pouncing sort of reaction times, very similar to that. Yeah, because like Rajiv speaks, like, so, like, speaking about like with the races and stuff like that. So the one racism thing, like with something like there's the right, so there's a bit in Borat, and I always bring this up to people I'm talking about Borat and that, is there's only one person, like when he did all the like things where he ran into somebody that I thought the person was genuinely a bad fucking person, even if because you know, he wasn't even baiting them to say that much after a while. It's, have you seen the one about like the American trophy hunter guy that has all the animals on like the game reserve where they're just basically shot from a fence, and then he's boasting about you know, like about how I'm an excellent hunter and all that, and then he's on about like actually killing the Jews and all that, and how Hitler had some great ideas without really being baited into it. So it's two kind of things I hate: trophy hunting and not being done in any kind of sustainable way, but, you know, of just like, oh, here's a rich person paying a load of money to just be able to walk up and shoot from like 10 yards a lion or something. So he's that kind of guy. And then he's also the fucking kind of guy that is actually into all the racial eugenics, despite the fact that, if I remember right, he was like fat and ugly, because they always are. You know, it's very rare you see people that actually look good, weirdly, that are into eugenics. Yeah, I've got all the Stalker games. Right, Shadow of Chernobyl, Clear Sky, Call of Pripyat, and Stalker 2. Got all of them. What do you mean, do I have a letterbox? I've got a letterbox on my house, or is letterbox something else? So what is it, a streaming service? What? You have to be a bit... I don't know what you mean by just letterbox. But yeah, and I've played loads and loads of Stalker mods as well. Yes, I'm a very big fan of Stalker. Also, the film I'm not a massive fan of, you know, the old Tarkovsky, whatever he's called, film. But I do like Roadside Picnic, the book it's based on. There's also a good audio reading of Roadside Picnic on YouTube for anyone who's never read or heard it. So if you want to listen to the audiobook version of Roadside Picnic, there's quite a good recording some guy did, you know, like where obviously like the book's not in copyright really because it's an old communist era book. And, you know, it's just a guy who recorded it with a decent quality microphone and put it up for free so other people could listen. different British slang from different areas of the country, probably like a lot of countries. Let me find it for you, Rajiv, and anybody else interested. So like I said, Roadside Picnic is, I think it's a very good book. But like I said, I like audiobooks personally because I can listen to an audiobook. Here it is. Roadside Picnic, an unofficial audiobook. And I'll share it because YouTube's done the annoying thing where if I copy the URL, it's messed the URL up. T-shirt? Well, why? It's not one of the interesting ones today. CLK Bateman with like an interesting military thing on or whatever, or a joke one. It's just like a cheap. If I remember right, it was probably a Primark one. But yeah, it's because I had if I went into a room that was cold earlier, I had my fucking Vatnik on. So I had the fucking Vatnik on when I was in the rooms that were actually genuinely cold. But this room, after the PC's been on a while, and if any of the heating's been on, ends up in a heat trap even in winter. Oh yeah, I think it's also the thing, Rajiv, isn't it? As you get older, you just don't get the younger people's things. All right, yeah, I get what you mean. I kind of want to get some Hawaiian shirts, but I've got too much shit already. British people screaming on voice chat, not normally when I hear people screaming on voice chat, it's fucking Russians. Although actually probably not so much anymore, but yeah, because it's like, you know, the thing of the Riz of the Ohio GATT Phantom tax, you know, all that Gen Alpha shit. I was watching a thing of Asmongold playing what was it, Roblox earlier, getting like disgusted by it, which is quite a funny stream. But also because there's a lot of PDF files in that because it's a kids game, you know, so there's a lot of fucking weird shit in that. Again, Roblox is a thing I have no fucking clue what it was until I watched that. I still have no clue, but all that was like, oh, this is so brain rot, yeah. Riz Skibbity 67, yeah, oh yeah, 6767, whatever it is their latest fucking thing, isn't it? What is it? Is it just like shouting bogeys or something like that? Because there was like a thing when I was a kid where either bogeys or whatever else, where like the kids used to like each try and dare each other to shout like some sort of rude word louder than the other at school. So it'd be like saying like pussy, pussy, you know, like, and then obviously the person who wins is also kind of the person that gets caught. But you know, like then if the teacher hears you say it, sort of thing. But it's just like saying an offensive thing like louder and louder in the public place. Is it like that, or is it just something completely different? Like they just find it's funny to shout it. Before I finished the job I was doing, the younger members of staff did some of that shouting of like 6-7 randomly, and I was just kind of like, what the fuck is this? Do your fucking job. It's not good for you. I don't like this time of year when I'm congested. I just don't get. Yeah, like I said, there's just a lot of this with the YouTube crash. Didn't for me. But yeah, there's a lot of this stuff just with yeah. I'll go off in a minute because I've been on nearly an hour and a half now on this stream, and this will actually run out of battery if I do it for too long on here, because even though it's plugged in, it drains the battery faster than it charges up through a USB port of streaming it. But yeah, like at least with some generations, even if I don't kind of get the stuff, I get it well enough that I can get why people like it. Do you know what I mean? With a lot of this Gen Alpha stuff, I just don't fucking get it. Like, you know, it's kind of like looking at a caveman eating shit or something, where you're like, what are you doing? What is a marathon stream? What, just go as long as you can before you crash out? I definitely need like a load of drinks and everything lined up here to do that. So, you know. I'm trying to remember what the longest stream ever I did was. Can I sort my videos by length? Hang on. I know I live. No, I don't think it'll filter. Is that... No, I don't think, annoyingly, there's a YouTube way of sorting by length. I think at one point I might have done a video game stream that was well over 3 hours long, where we just got really, really into a game, and it was like loads of people and having a good chat, so I didn't want to end it. I can't remember when that was and what game it was. All right, Scott, again, you've come on when I'm just going off, I'm afraid, because I've been on an hour and a half. All right, don't forget to like the stream, everybody, because Scott's come on. I will stay on a little bit longer. But like I said, not too much longer. And yeah, speaking of fucking bogeys and everything, yeah, my nose at the moment, like I said, is I've definitely got over the worst of that cold thing I had, but I'm still getting like a bit of an upset stomach from it, and you know, like a mucusy kind of nose. But why is 6-7 pattern recognition? I don't get it. I just don't get it. I think that, as you said, Stalker, I think it's just that Gen Alpha, or whoever's coming up with this weird shit, aren't very good at coming up with interesting historical, cultural things. You know, if they looked back at stuff and then said, during whichever period you had all of these great painters, and then you had these great films made by people, and then, you know, in this generation, the children would yell at 6-7. This was the peak form of entertainment. So yeah, it's just one of those things that, yeah, like said, like even I used to be mean on the Zoomers. This is the thing, Rajiv, even getting older, I can at least still get a lot of the Zoomery things, and there's still some of the things that Zoomers do I kind of like, especially that Zoomers are kind of politically a bit more based. The millennials who are my age, you know, more of them realize that certain things cause problems and need to be gotten rid of. But yeah, actually, I'm just wondering, does UV light show up anything there? I was wondering if a Geiger Muller tube, if UV light showed anything inside them. Because with the really cool thing with a Geiger Muller tube, though, is if it's being exposed to really like high radiation, you're in a pitch black room and you can actually see the tube. The tubes glow. I've done videos on that before. Yeah, the thing is, like, again, everybody's always like, oh, it's always worse after my generation. Even the Greeks and that, people have found texts going back to then where people did that. But that's the thing, that there's been times in history where I think things have been bad, then things have improved, then got worse again. But there's been a lot of stuff recently where everything just constantly seems to get worse. What does the Russian optimist say? Things couldn't possibly get any worse. Oh, speaking of that, is there any updates? And again, the Western media is being really shit on this. But about Iran. Iran's student protester shot in back of the head and buried by roadside. And she's quite a fit girl as well. So, you know, again, I fucking hate the Islamic regime in Iran. I hope the Ayatollah gets necklaced, as in tie around his neck, set on fire with petrol. But yeah, I am really hoping the Iranians fucking kill all the fucking... Again, I'm not going to even be moderate with this if it sounds like I'm calling for violence, because I am against the Islamic regime in Iran. I really hope that the worst possible things, like, you know, happening to Putin, happens to the Islamic Republican government. You know, all the Ayatollahs and that shit. I hope they get it, you know, worse than Nuremberg. It does look at least like it's going that way, but a lot of innocent people are going to die in Iran, and they've suffered over there for long enough. But yeah, at least. But again, that I've been having to follow, like, you know, expat Iranian YouTubers. You know, because of how shit our Western media has been. And so a lot of them are commenting on about how bad the media has been on reporting it. Well, yeah, that's the thing. But again, like, speaking about Iran, if you're on about Iran, Caesar, is Iranians that have come to the UK, everyone I've met has been nice. And they've always been the ones that have been like the most worried about like Islamification of stuff going on in Britain. Because again, they've lived through it. So even if they're actually Muslims, they're like, this shit is really bad. Why are you letting this happen? Whereas, you know, then you'll get some white liberal going, now kumbaya, hug everyone. But yeah, they've cut the internet for several days there now, and now they've cut all the phone lines and electricity in all the major cities because, you know, the government's like, oh, if we turn the lights off, people will go home and stop protesting. Yeah, I hope the Ayatollah gets hung from a lamppost by razor wire. Well, again, people are saying the best thing would be if he actually gets put on trial, given life in prison, and then gets to mope for the last years of his life and see, his Iran get undone. But, and again, Iran is such an exporter of terrorism around the world. Again, the Islamic Republic, not the actual, regular people of Iran. But, I did like in this first term, though, how Trump got Soleimani, or whatever his name was, barbecued him with a drone. But yeah, I did see a good picture earlier as well of all the people that have gone, like, Assad and the Venezuelan guy now and that, and it's going to be the Ayatollah soon. You can't easily move to America. Here's the funny thing. Person saying something in Russian that I can't read, or Cyrillic that I can't read. Yeah, Iran pre-1975 did look good. Again, it wasn't great for everybody there, because again, people who have come over from Iran still said under the Shah there was still a lot of problems. It's just that it got worse. It wasn't a case like everything was great there before. The Iranian Revolution in 79 happened for a reason, but it's just, it got fucking worse. It's like, when Rhodesia turned into Zimbabwe. It went from something that was bad for some people to bad for everybody. Oh, goodbye. Das Vidania. But yeah, so yes, but I'm hoping that because 2026 that would be a good thing this year if the Iranian people actually get to start turning their country into a proper country where people get to enjoy their lives and stuff like that. But yeah, speaking about moving to America, that's the funny thing is even with Trump there, where they keep saying about lots of stuff about wanting the people who want to have American values coming to America. The rules still aren't easy. Like, they still basically want you to buy your way in with a very expensive visa, and have a job lined up and everything else. But again, I do find it weird with America for so long, and I'm not saying it's like this under Trump, but like loads of the Western countries, they were doing the thing where it's very hard to come to America if you actually want to come and work and contribute. But if you want to like break in and then become a parasite on the country through fraud and all that stuff, then we'll do that more easily. Because like I said, that's the thing that was happening in the UK that's still happening, where we keep getting like the worst quality illegal immigrants that just want to leech off the welfare system and commit crimes. They're the ones the government seems to think should have more rights than people that actually want to work and make this country not a shit pile. I don't know. The one to actually buy your way into citizenship, Ohio Uncle, I think it's like $500,000 or something like that. But I know just the visas in general are very expensive. And like I said, the problem with America now as well is that you have to show all your phone for memes and stuff, don't you, to the border agents in case you laughed at J.D. Vance or Trump or something. I don't know, but like I said, America is a country I definitely want to visit. But and again, being somebody with chronic illnesses, America wouldn't be a good place for me to live because my health insurance would be very, very fucking expensive. As bad as the NHS is in lots of ways, where bits of it don't work very well anymore, at least I can pay a yearly fee for all of my medications that isn't, absurd. Where, in America, I just would not be able to afford the medications I need to stay alive. So there's that. But again, like I said, I'm not going to shit talk the Americans, because like I said, I get on very well with Americans on here. It's just, I kind of like, even though there's a lot of stuff wrong with the UK, some of our systems work quite well. I don't think so, Ohio Uncle. I think it's literally a thing of once you've got that, you're permanently a US citizen. You've got your passport. You can't be a president, though. Like, that rule still applies. But like I said, it's definitely like a place I'd want to go and visit some states, see a lot of the scenery, go to a load of shooting ranges and have a good time. Go to Vegas, gamble a load of money, eat lots of very unhealthy, high-fat foods. I'd love to do that on a vacation kind of thing. But it's not the kind of place that, how it is at the moment. Yeah, all of us want Britain to be better, but like I said, it's just we can't seem at the moment to vote our way out of a shit thing at the moment. Kia just keeps, I'm just going to keep making things worse for everybody. Yeah, like I said, nearly every week with Labour and Kia, there's a new thing that's like rage-inducing. Like, again, he's at his lowest ever point, because he keeps setting records for that, of being the most unpopular prime minister in history. 11% approval rating now. 11% approval rating. So he's got an 11% approval rating, the worst in, you know, British history that's ever been recorded, when they actually were properly polled and recorded for prime ministers. So yeah, 11% approval rating, and he is still trying to find more things to piss people off. So, you know, just keeps getting his score lower and lower. And the current thing is, oh, we need to ban X to protect the children, because, and it's literally because people take the piss out of him on there. I know that California's on the West Coast. I know that. It's probably still quite early in the day for you at the moment, is it? Is it what, like 10 a.m. in California at the moment, 11 a.m.? Because it's 7:45 in the evening here. It's 1943 military time. I think reform won't be worse than the current lot. Like, again, but I still don't want to be too hopeful even with reform. And again, there's still some stuff for reform that I don't know if they do a good job on. But yeah, I can see why people are going either far left, far right, relatively speaking, in the UK. Everybody's just done now with Tories, Labour, Lib Dems, because they never fucking do any of their promises. I really like the look of Maine, to be honest, just because New England is kind of, it looks like England, doesn't it? That's why they called it New England then, because the settlers over there. But, you know, like all the autumny looking stuff in New England and there. But again, lots of the states have cool things. Like a lot of Americans I chat with are Floridians and stuff like that. And Texas is kind of stereotypical America for us outside, you know, America. We kind of think of every American as a Texan, even though Texas probably wants to be its own thing, don't they, rather than America. But yeah, you know, I'm sure lots of states have various different things going for them. Obviously, California is where Hollywood and all the tech comes from. You know, it's Florida, man. Yeah, good. Have you eaten your bath salts today, Kevin, and wrestled an alligator? But yeah, I do like the Florida man stories. I just think with Florida, isn't it? Because apparently one of my friends was saying with all the Florida man stuff, it's because lots of the media in Florida actually reports on the weird, like, police cases where in other states they don't. So you would have you would have Ohio man and equivalents of Florida man everywhere else if they actually reported the same way. It's just the way the Floridian media works. Yeah, Wyoming and yeah, like I said, loads of America's great, and Canada. But yeah, again, it's going to be cold and shit, isn't it, in the winter, Scott? But like I said, I think the autumn looks very nice there. But yeah, fall, yeah, what we call autumn, you call fall. Yeah, it looks very nice in that. And at the moment, you've got what fucking state is it where it's all going weird at the moment? Where the ICE agent shot the crazy Karen, and now everybody's going fucking mental after all the Somali scam daycares got exposed. Is that Michigan? I can't fucking remember now. Oh yeah, Florida is also very, very humid. Devil's arse crack, whatever it is, Florida, for because again, it's the heat plus humidity which gets you. Minnesota, yeah. Thank you, Space Movie. But yeah, and there's like more and more Karens doing stupid shit using like with their babies in the back of the car or having their babies on those things like, oh, the riot cop won't hit me if I have my baby as a human shield. Like, what a shitty parent you are. Ah, right. So yeah, rather than their name being thing, a Floridian man, like Florida man, Florida woman. Yeah, that makes perfect sense, Kevin. Yeah. We have a thing here before I go off called the scales of justice, where this is only when people have been convicted. So not before they've been convicted of anything, but you can read up on a load of the thing. So if I do scales of justice, Oxford, let's see if there are any really fucking funny things. Right, there was one from the Oxford Mail 7 days ago. Right, let's have a quick look at this before I go off. But subscribe to read this article. Fuck off. And you can't do cached anymore with thing. Why is so many sites shit like this? I'm not gonna subscribe to read your article. I'm just not gonna use your site. Again, these sites almost load up to start with, so I think there would be a way of doing it, like a cached way. But yeah, used to read all the things about people drink driving like 20 times over the limit, or somebody being arrested for like sticking loads of stakes down their trousers and walking out of the shop with them. You know, there's some horrible stuff on there, like obviously like stabbings and domestic abuse and that, but you'd always get some weird, funny ones. And again, drink driving isn't funny, because if somebody obviously drinks and drive and kills somebody, that's awful. But I think we get more people like on random drugs driving now than drink driving. You know. But yeah, like I said, but yeah, no, I can't read the Scales of Justice anymore because I have to sign up or maybe pay a fee to read it so they can fuck off. But yeah, anyway, I'm going to actually go off now. So don't forget to like the stream before you go. I've been on 1 hour and 45 minutes. But yeah, I'm going to put this little strontium aluminate thing on somewhere. So yeah, this stuff is strontium, by the way, that, you know, if it was radioactive, it would be strontium-90. But this is obviously strontium powder mixed with a fluorescent dye, and it becomes a very, very nice glowing green thing. But this isn't radioactive, so it doesn't glow on its own. It needs, you know, light or whatever to make it glow. It's just this stuff does glow very, very, very well under UV lights. Yes, you can see it more easily at that angle. Just yeah. But yeah, this strontium is a very, very good metal for turning into glow-in-the-dark powder. But yeah, not strong. I imagine you could probably do it with strontium-90, not that you'd want to. This is going to be whatever normal chemical element is for strontium. But yeah, I was just seeing if it's a good way of cupping that to show you. Yeah, you can see the glow there quite well, even with the ceiling light on, because of yeah, the. Yeah, they probably use something similar for the lightsabers. They were almost just like a bit of see-through plastic, weren't they, on a lot of them, on the Lego minifigures? Like a little bit of red see-through plastic or green see-through plastic or whatever. But yeah, I see what you mean, though. Yeah, it does kind of look like that, like a little minifigure if they were holding it. Yeah, I might put that back on my keyring. I've already got one thing like this on my keyring, but I do find things like this pretty good. So I've got some tritium on my keyring. And that's a really cool thing, is because the tritium is radioactive and it's modern tritium, not old stuff. It's going to glow for a few years still yet. Even if you've had the keys somewhere where they haven't been exposed to anything to excite the phosphor next to the tritium, the key ring still glows in the dark with the tritium little thing on the key ring because it's tritium. Although I've got orange tritium, which doesn't glow anywhere near as bright as green tritium because of, well, not the tritium, but, you know, like green glow in the dark stuff because it's the most visible to the human eye. So I might at some point when it's in stock again have to get a green tritium thing to put on my keyring as well. What tritium stuff, Ohio Uncle, or something else? This thing was just one I bought from some arts and craft eBay seller where they do them in various colors and then turn them into key rings. Because the other cool thing with glow in the dark stuff like this is if you're ever exposed to really horrifying levels of radiation, these start glowing on their own. So that is some way of telling you you're being exposed to radiation, because they're being exposed to radiation the same way that, you know, like a bright ceiling light charges them up. Cheers, thank you. Yeah, tritium, it's, yeah, 3 helium atoms, isn't it, Rajiv, rather than 2 helium atoms, or whatever it is. But yeah, thank you very much for that, Rajiv. I do appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. It's been a good long stream today. And my throat definitely is a lot better than it was, because my voice hasn't completely gone yet, even though it's definitely on the way out. So, yeah, I will be on for a stream tomorrow, and I want to get some, at least one long form video film tomorrow. So yeah, hopefully, yeah, if I put that there and there, you can actually see the glow quite well through that. Little, it's just like an empty washer kind of thing, but yeah, you can see the how much that glows, because obviously, yeah, there we go. And that camera is really hot, so I do really need to stop the stream now. Right, thanks for watching, everybody. Hopefully be on for a stream tomorrow, and I want to film one like long normal video tomorrow, not a load of short. So yeah, thanks for watching, everybody. And yeah, the dual stream thing doesn't work, even I'm doing everything as I should for dual stream to work, and YouTube's told me I can do it, just I can't click it and turn it on. And I've not got any browser things, extensions turned on YouTube that are fucking with it. So it's just a broken feature on my channel at the moment. So right, anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to like the stream on your way out, and see you all tomorrow. Right, hopefully see you tomorrow anyway. Bye.